The pen scratched the paper as my brother signed the final inheritance transfer, smirking like he just won something he earned. My mother sat beside him, legs crossed, pretending to dab at invisible tears with a monogrammed handkerchief. The lawyer wouldn't look at me. I didn't understand what I was seeing. My father's house, his company shares, his retirement, all being signed over to the one child who hadn't visited him in the hospital for months. When I finally stood and said, "Wait, this isn't right," my brother didn't even look up. He slid a small white envelope across the table toward me with 2 fingers, like he was flicking away dust. "Dad thought this was for the best," he said. The entire room felt rigged and I was still sitting in it. My mother stood, took my brother's arm and told the lawyer, "Let's finalize the deed transfer before she makes a scene. My name is Callie Rowan and 3 weeks ago I buried my father. Today I watched my brother strip me out of his legacy like I never existed." I left the lawyer's office numb, clutching the useless envelope I hadn't opened yet. They didn't even wait for the elevator. I heard laughter echo down the hallway as I pushed through the stairwell door. My father used to call me his anchor. He made me co-manage his medication schedule. I drove him to chemo. I handled every late bill and phone call when he was too weak to speak. And now apparently, I'm the daughter he didn't trust with a dime? None of it made sense. Not yet. I opened the envelope in the parking lot, and there was only one item inside. It was a single-page farewell letter, typed, not handwritten. No greeting. No signature. Just one paragraph about respecting the family's wishes, and accepting limited involvement in the estate. The wording was cold, clinical, nothing like my father. My stomach dropped. He would never have written this. My brother's new Range Rover pulled out of the lot as I was still holding the paper. I could see my mother in the passenger seat smiling like a queen leaving a coronation. Something about the letter felt off immediately. The font, the tone, the date. The date was 2 days after he slipped into hospice-level sedation. I realized someone else wrote it and used his name. 6 months before he died, my father called me to his study. He sat in his worn leather chair, glasses low on his nose, and told me he wanted everything split evenly between me and my brother. He said, "You're the one who shows up, Callie. The paperwork will reflect that." I remembered the way he tapped the folder on his lap. Brown, thick, sealed. That was the last time he spoke about the will with me. Not long after, my mother started insisting I call before visiting. My brother began showing up to help with finances, never when I was there. I started to wonder when they decided to change everything, and how early it began. That night, I sat in my car outside my apartment, replaying a voicemail I'd ignored weeks earlier. It was my brother's voice, left on my father's landline by mistake, forwarded automatically to me. He was arguing with my mother. "She won't fight this if it looks official. He'll be gone soon, just promise me you'll keep her out of it." My mother whispered something I couldn't make out. Then he said it, clear as glass, "Once I have everything she'll get over it. She always does." My breath caught in my throat. The betrayal wasn't imagined. It was recorded. I pressed save on the voicemail and a new thought formed. I might not be as powerless as they thought. The hospice room still smelled like lemon disinfectant and wilted flowers. The recliner where I used to sleep beside him was gone, replaced with a gray visitor chair I'd never seen. A nurse I didn't recognize told me my mother handled the final arrangements. She said it gently, but I heard what she meant. I wasn't invited to help my father die. The nurse handed me a box with his belongings. Slippers, glasses, a watch, and a wallet missing his ID. My chest burned. I asked if he ever asked for me near the end. She hesitated before answering, and that hesitation was its own kind of knife. On my way out, I passed the chapel and saw my mother inside, smiling in conversation with the lawyer. My mother didn't see me, but I heard her voice through the cracked chapel door. "She won't contest it. She doesn't have the money or the stomach for a fight." The lawyer murmured something back, low and sympathetic. My mother laughed, actually laughed, like this was cleanup after a party. I froze in the doorway, fingers digging into the box of my father's things. They planned this before he was even gone. They counted on my grief to blind me. For the first time since the reading, the shock drained to something hotter. Something with claws. I snapped a photo of them through the door, just in case faces mattered later. I spread my father's belongings out on my kitchen table. The watch was scratched where he used to tap it when he thought. His wallet was thinner than I remembered. I opened the photo compartment expecting to see my baby picture. The one he always kept. It was gone. Instead, there was a business card from the lawyer dated 2 months before he passed, with "urgent" scribbled on the back. But I was the one handling his appointments then. No one said anything about legal urgency. Something in me clicked. If they erased me from the paperwork, they probably erased me from his room, his voice, his proof. I found a folded prescription receipt with a signature that didn't look like his. The next morning, I called the pharmacy listed on the prescription receipt. I told them I was reviewing records for insurance. The pharmacist pulled the file and casually said, "Your brother picked up most of these near the end. Your mother signed as secondary." I gripped the counter so hard my knuckles whitened. He also mentioned a sedative I'd never heard of, prescribed weeks before hospice. Dad was lucid then. Why would he need it? Why didn't I know? The pharmacist offered to email the file, if the estate executor approves. I almost laughed. Executor. That was my brother now. I hung up and realized I needed someone who knew how wills got rewritten in secret. I scrolled through my contacts until I landed on someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Grace Whitfield, my father's former assistant at his company. She left after my brother took over transition planning, but she always liked me. When I called, she answered on the second ring. The moment I said my father's name, her voice tightened. She told me she saw my mother and brother meeting with a different lawyer before my father was on hospice. She said, he thought that was just for trust updates. He didn't know they were changing things. My heart started pounding so hard I felt it in my ears. Grace said she still had copies of documents my father signed. Before everything shifted, Grace met me in a quiet coffee shop and slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were scanned copies of my father's previous will and a letter he dictated to her about splitting everything evenly and transitioning company shares to both of us. The date was 7 months before he died. He was healthy then, clear-minded. Grace said she only kept them because she didn't trust the sudden secrecy later. I felt the first flicker of solid ground under my feet. Grace mentioned there were 2 witnesses when that will was signed, and one was still reachable. I found the first witness, a longtime accountant who worked with my dad. I visited his office unannounced. When I mentioned my name and my father's old will, he went pale and closed the door. He remembered everything, the meeting, the intentions, the equal split. I asked if he ever signed anything else for Dad after that. He said no. When I asked if he'd swear to that legally, he hesitated only a moment before saying, "If it comes down to it, yes." The air in the room changed. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was gathering ammunition. He told me he once saw my mother leaving a courier service with legal envelopes, 2 months before Dad died. I visited the courier office. The clerk refused at first, citing privacy, but when I mentioned possible forged documents, his eyebrows lifted. He checked archived logs. My mother's name appeared twice, both tied to documents sent to the same law firm handling the will reading. Both signatures labeled urgent, medical directive. The dates overlapped with the sedative prescription. My stomach turned. They were planning while he was still conscious. And isolating him. The clerk mentioned something was notarized there by a relative who claimed power of attorney. I called the notary listed in the courier record. She was confused when I mentioned my father. She remembered notarizing something but said, "He wasn't there. Your brother said your father was too sick to come in, but the signature looked rushed." When I asked if she kept the logbook, she said yes. She agreed to make a copy if subpoenaed. Rage simmered under my ribs, but it was sharp now, not chaotic. They counted on me collapsing and staying broken. I got a text from Grace. She found a voicemail backup Dad left on her old work email. Grace played the voicemail for me in her car. My father's voice was faint but steady. He talked about updating his will with his 2 children equally involved, and setting money aside for Callie's future. He mentioned he didn't want my brother handling things alone. Hearing him say my name like that cracked something open in me. Every betrayal just got louder. It was proof he never meant to cut me out. Grace said there was something else. She saw a different will draft on his desk weeks before hospice with both our names. I searched my father's home office alone while my mother was out. The desk drawers were nearly empty. I checked inside an old dictionary he kept receipts in, just instinct, and found a folded sheet wedged between pages. An unsigned draft outlining equal inheritance, joint business control, and a clause preventing unilateral changes without both children. My hands shook as I took photos. They didn't erase everything. They missed this. As I closed the drawer, I heard the front door unlock. My mother walked in with groceries and stopped when she saw me. Her eyes narrowed, but she put on a smile too quickly. She asked what I was doing there. I lied and said I came to leave flowers in Dad's study. She didn't buy it, but she couldn't prove anything. As I headed toward the door, she said, "You need to stop living in the past. It's already done." The softness in her voice was worse than if she'd screamed. She added casually, "Your brother will make sure you're comfortable, like I was some stray they might feed." I booked an appointment with a different estate attorney, one with a reputation for dismantling forged wills. I laid out the timeline, the voicemail recording, document scans, and witness statements. She listened without interrupting once. When I finished, she said, "If this goes to court, you won't just win, you'll level them." She started drafting a formal notice of contest. For the first time, I felt something close to oxygen filling my body. As I was leaving, my phone buzzed. My brother had transferred the company shares into his personal account. I showed up at my father's old office while my brother was meeting with board members about taking full control. When he saw me in the lobby, his smile dropped. I didn't raise my voice. I simply handed him notice of legal intent to challenge the will and mentioned the notary's statement. The board members glanced between us. He stuttered something about family disputes, but sweat beaded on his forehead. I didn't stay long. I wanted him stewing in silence. 10 minutes after I left, my attorney texted that the court accepted emergency review of the will. My mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. She didn't knock, she used the spare key I forgot she had. She sat at my table and said I was making trouble for no reason. When I mentioned the voicemail and the signed draft, her face went stiff. She tried to say Dad was confused near the end, but I reminded her the dates didn't match her story. Finally, her mask slipped. "You were never supposed to be in charge," she said, cold and plain. Before leaving, she warned me, "If you do this, you'll regret embarrassing this family." My attorney located the second witness from the original will, a retired neighbor who adored my father. She agreed to testify that Dad made it clear both kids were inheriting equally, and that he was of sound mind when he said it. She also remembered seeing my brother arguing with my mother in the driveway weeks later about needing it done before she finds out. That detail hit like a drumbeat. Their timeline was collapsing. My attorney filed a motion to freeze all asset transfers until the hearing. At the preliminary hearing, my brother and mother arrived confident and polished. But the judge reviewed the emergency motion and immediately halted their access to accounts and property until authenticity was resolved. Their lawyer tried to dismiss the voicemail as informal, but my attorney introduced the notary statement and courier logs. I didn't speak once, but my brother kept glancing at me like I was setting fire to the floor. The judge scheduled a full evidentiary hearing and demanded the original will be produced. The day before the hearing, the notary provided her logbook copy. It clearly showed my brother claiming power of attorney, signed the same week the sedative prescription began. My attorney filed it as evidence of coercion and possible forgery. The accountant sent a sworn statement confirming Dad never amended his will again after the equal share version. My mother tried calling me 4 times. I didn't pick up. Grace texted me, "You should see this." It was an email backup showing my father questioning changes he didn't authorize. In court, my attorney laid everything out: voicemail, witness testimonies, draft will, courier logs, notary record, sedative timeline. When the judge asked my brother to explain the signature discrepancies, he stammered and looked to my mother. She tried to object, but the judge shut her down. The courtroom went silent when the voicemail played. My father's voice saying my name echoed through the room like a resurrection. My mother pressed her lips together until they whitened. My brother's jaw trembled. The judge ordered a handwriting expert to compare the final will signatures. The expert's report confirmed the signature on the final will wasn't my father's. The judge declared the document invalid and reinstated the earlier version, 50-50 split. But since my brother knowingly misrepresented himself and moved assets, the court froze his portion pending investigation. The house, accounts, and company shares were placed under my control until redistribution was finalized. My mother avoided eye contact. My brother's lawyer asked for recess, but it was too late. I walked out of the courthouse into cold sunlight. Not victorious like a conqueror but steady. My father's legacy was mine again. Not because I screamed but because I refused to disappear. They tried to take everything. In the end they only proved who never deserved it.